How does a woman make the difficult decision to separate from her husband? And if you're already separated, how do you know when it's the right time to reconcile? Before tackling these important questions, let me be clear. I have a high view of marriage. I'm a Christian and I believe in the Bible. I believe marriage is a covenant relationship that should be taken very seriously. But I also believe that God cares about you and He values the safety and sanity of the people in a marriage more than the institution itself. Now let me say that again. I believe God values your safety and your sanity more than the institution of marriage itself. And so for this reason, there are times when separation is the right decision. But how do you know if it's the right choice for you? First of all, if your marriage is unsafe. Now, maybe your husband isn't physically abusive, but you can still be unsafe. You can be unsafe emotionally, mentally, spiritually, sexually, and financially. If your spouse has a pattern of being deceitful, grossly irresponsible, unfaithful, or cruel, your safety is in question. Second, separation can be used to send a very clear message to your husband that his unbiblical pattern of behavior over time is damaging you and your children. Separation should only happen when every other effort to resolve these issues have failed. Separation can serve as a wake-up call to your husband. What you're telling him is you will not pretend anymore that the way he treats you is acceptable, tolerable, or endurable. Your relationship is dying, and without some significant changes, it won't survive. So the next question is, well, how long should you stay separated? And how do you know if or when it's time to reconcile? Many pastors try to put a time limit where a couple is separated for 2 weeks or 2 months. Their concern is that the longer a couple is apart, the more likely they are to divorce. But the key question isn't around the amount of time. The key question is around the amount of work that's being done during the separation. In 3 months' time, if you and your husband have not been doing your own personal work of repentance and healing, the separation is nothing but a waste of time. And I guarantee you, the marriage will not magically be better when he moves back in. In fact, it's almost certain that the problems will intensify, leading to another separation or even divorce. The confusion this creates in your children with this back and forth is not healthy. So before you stop a separation and move back together, ask yourself these questions. Has there been any evidence of repentance and change? Now, promises don't count. You're looking for changed behaviors, different attitudes, different actions. So if there was verbal abuse in the marriage, has the disrespect and sarcasm stopped? Do you notice a difference when you're talking together? If there was financial mismanagement, is he making amends by seeing a financial counselor, working a second job to pay off debt, or being open and transparent with you about the financial situation you're in? If there was sexual betrayal, infidelity, or sexual addiction, has he owned his problem and is he seeking help and accountability with it? If you don't see any healthy changes happening while you're separated, please don't fool yourself into thinking that they will happen if you move back together, because they won't. Another question to ask yourself is this: have you done your own work while separated? While your husband may have plenty of work to do to change, you too have your own work to do. Maybe you need to learn how to set better boundaries so that you stop enabling destructive behavior, that you're no longer passive when it comes to your finances, not knowing where things are or what's happening. Maybe you need to make God the focus of your life instead of being a marriage-centered woman, becoming a God-centered woman. Many women I work with also need to learn how to take care of their own needs, physically, mentally, and spiritually, instead of being overly dependent on their husband. Also, it's important that you don't allow yourself to become hard-hearted and cynical about the possibility of reconciling. So back to the question of how long? Well, maybe you are seeing some change, but is it enough? Will it last? And how much change should you see before reconciling? First, the changes that you're seeing or noticing need to be consistent for at least 3 to 6 months. This allows you to see a consistent pattern of new behaviors that your husband is working on. 2 weeks of love bombing isn't enough to build new history. Second, does your husband self-correct when he slips back into old behavior? You know, he's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. But does he recognize his mistakes, apologize, and most importantly, stop them? Third, how's he responding now to your feedback? Does he listen to you, or does he still ignore you? Does he respect your feelings and modify his behavior? When you tell him, for example, you're feeling scared, Or maybe you want to see the checkbook balance or other documents to validate what he says? Or does he mock you or ignore you? There are no guarantees, obviously, but answering these questions will give you a good idea of where your husband's heart is at, and it will help you know whether the changes you're seeing are real or temporary. And at the same time, if your own heart is unable to welcome him back without holding the past over his head, then your marriage can't be saved no matter what your husband does, because you'll never be able to trust him. And sometimes it's true. You will never be able to trust someone again, no matter what they do. But living under the guilt of past mistakes is no way for your husband to live either. Remember, the purpose of a separation is for your safety and healing, as well as your husband's healing and a wake-up call for him to do his work. Reconciliation is the goal, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So it only can happen if there's been a change of mind and heart that you can see by consistently changed actions and attitudes.